Good evening and welcome back to our Parshah webcast. For the last couple of weeks we didn't have this class, so it's nice to be back. This week's Parshah is the Parshah of Rabbi, which is the fourth portion in the book of Deuteronomy. And there are a lot of the subjects discussed in this portion, but I want to zero in for the next few moments on one subject, which is very famous and known to everyone. That is the laws of kashrut. In this week's portion we have the mitzvah, the commandment, what animals, what meat we're allowed to consume, and which of the animals we are prohibited to consume. And as you know, the Torah gives two signs as to which is a kosher animal and which is a non-kosher animal. By the way, I want to just make a little mention that tonight's class is directed directly to the vegetarians within the group. I mean it. I'm not going to be talking about eating meat. I'm going to be talking about this whole idea as it relates to the inner animal that finds itself in our own hearts, as we'll explain in a few moments. What are the two signs of a kosher and a non-kosher animal? What's an animal in Hebrew? A behema. What is a behema tahora, a clean, kosher animal? The Torah gives two signs. The first one is that it has to chew its cud. And the second sign is that it has to have cloven hooves, split hooves. Correct? You know all that. Mm-hmm. And therefore a sheep, a cow, a bull, a goat, those are kosher animals. But then there are animals that lack these signs or lack both signs. They have maybe one sign, they don't have both signs. Either that's their hooves are split, or are split but they do not chew its cud, or they chew its cud but their hooves are not split, which renders them non-kosher. And then there's of course animals which have neither. They don't have any sign. They don't chew their cud and they don't have split hooves. Of course they too are not kosher. Now in Judaism, when you say something is a sign for something, in this case, you have split hooves and you chew your cud, that's a sign that you are a kosher animal, that this animal is kosher. There's two ways to look at this. One hand, you can say the animal's kosher status has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it chews its cud. What does chewing the cud have to do with it being kosher or not? It's just that God says, how do you know which is a kosher animal, which is not? I'm going to give you two signs, but not that the signs cause it to be kosher. Or you can look at it in a different way. That the very signs are somehow related to the kosher status of the animal or not. In other words, why is it kosher? Because it chews its cud and has split hooves. The other way to look at it is not because. It's nothing to do with the split hooves. You know, what about a split hoof makes an animal kosher? There's no relationship. It just happens to be, that's the sign. Not because it has it, but it happens to have. God's giving you two signs. It's like God, someone tells you, you know what, I want to send this package to my house. How do you know which is my house? You look on the front, it says the numbers 356, you'll know that's my house. 356 has nothing to do with me and my house. It's not my house because it says 356. You want to know which is my house, that's the sign that it's my house. It says 356 or 770. Or you could look at it, the very numbers make it. It's because it has 356, that's why it's my house. The numbers 3, 5, 6 have a connection with me and my house. That's what makes it my house. What do you think it is regarding the kosher signs? Is the kashrus of the status of the kashrus of the animal as a result of it being split hooves and chewing its cud, or just a sign?
I'm sure.
Well, the Torah says clearly that this is kosher because it has split hooves and chews its cud, which tells us clearly that the very signs themselves cause it to be kosher. Not that just that's my address. The address of a kosher animal is it has a split hoof. But it just as well could be without a split hoof, and it could be kosher if God so decides. It just happens to be that every kosher animal has a split hoof. Or no, the split hoof makes it kosher. And that's the way it really is. The two signs are what cause it to be kosher. They're not just a sign that happens to be that this is kosher. And how do you know? You look at the signs and that's it. What are these two signs? Why is it that these two signs make it kosher? So let's talk about a human animal. We know that we have a soul that we refer to as the animal soul, right? The animalistic urge, the animalistic soul. And it is important to make sure that our animalistic soul is a kosher one. And the Torah tells us, how do you know if your animal is kosher or not? If in your psyche you have these two signs, you have split hoofs, and you chew your cud, you know that your inner animal is kosher. Again, what are we talking about? We'll get to it. Let me explain. When we eat meat, or you eat bread, or you eat a vegetable, or you drink water, anything you consume, because that's what we're talking about, consuming food. What is the purpose of consuming food? Huh?
For energy.
For energy. To be healthy. Why did God create the human in such a way that it needs food to be energized and to be healthy? If you think about it, it makes no sense. It should be the other way around. A human is certainly on a higher level than an animal. Obviously. And an animal is certainly on a higher level than a fruit. And yet, the animal's sustenance is dependent on eating hay and fruit and vegetables and grass. The human's existence is dependent on eating, again, either meat or fish or fruits or bread or grain or whatever. It's the higher level is dependent on the lower level, not the other way around. You think, how is the bread going to sustain itself? By somehow getting a little bit of animal or getting a little bit of human into it, right? But it's the other way around. The human lives by getting a little bread into itself, a little bit of animal into itself. Why is that? Well, the reason is simple. There's a lot of explanation regarding this issue. But let me simplify it. The purpose of the creation, we know that in the creation there are 4 different categories of creations. In order, you have the inanimate, the lowest, stones, earth, lifeless objects. Then you have vegetation, trees, plants, things that grow, that have some life, right? You observe it over a few weeks, you see life. You won't see it every second because it doesn't grow every second in front of your eyes. But you go outside today and come back in 3 days, the grass grew. You see there's life there. It's on a higher level, vegetation. The next level is the animal. An animal, you don't have to wait 3 days to see its life. You see it immediately. It's a living thing. It's a living organism. You see it. It's got a life in it. But it doesn't have an intellectual life. It doesn't have a rational life. The human being is the highest of all. The ability to choose, the ability to contemplate, the ability to, to rationalize. And what's the ultimate goal in everything? Is as follows. The ultimate goal is to take the earth, stones, and elevate it to the level of the tree vegetation. The ultimate of the tree is to elevate it to the level of the animal. The ultimate of the animal is to elevate it to the level of the human. And the human takes all elements and elevates it and becomes godly. Elevates it all to become godly. Hopefully, obviously. So, for example, I know they laugh when I say this, but think about it. An animal, a sheep or a cow or a goat, at least the spiritual component of the sheep, goat, and the animal, would love to do a mitzvah. See, you and me can do mitzvahs and connect to God. Can a goat ever do a mitzvah and connect to God? Can a goat eat in a sukkah? Can a goat wear tefillin? Can a goat blow shofar? He would love to. I mean, the goat, of course, that's roaming around in your corral it doesn't know anything about shofar, it doesn't know anything about sukkah. But the spiritual life force within it certainly does. And it's stuck being a goat. It too would like to have a relationship with God, to do a mitzvah and connect to the divine. So God says, I have a way to do that. I have a way to accomplish that. Slaughter the goat, eat it at your Shabbos meal, and the next day, the goat is saying Shema Yisrael. Because now the goat became part of the human flesh, and when you say Shema, the next day there's the goat saying Shema. The famous story, you know the story. There's a chassid, his name was Rav Shmuel Munkes. And he was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. And there was a fabrengen one night, a Hasidic gathering where they were saying l'chaim, they were drinking. And after a couple of hours, they ran out of food. And you can't drink without food. You know that. But every Hasidic fabrengen, you need food. But they ran out. So the fabrengen, they threatened to end the fabrengen without food. You can't drink without a chaser, without something to eat. So you have a problem. Without food, the fabrengen comes to an end. So Rav Shmuel thought of a great idea. He'll go into his backyard. He had a goat. He slaughtered the goat. Brought the shochet. The ritual slaughter. He slaughtered it. He quickly prepared it, salted it, and prepared it. And he cooked it and roasted it, and he had a whole fabrengen going. He brought the meat with him half hour, 45 minutes. An hour later, there was a whole new fabrengen going. There was meat and there was galore. It was great. And the fabrengen lasted all night. The next morning, he's sleeping, because, he went to sleep late. His wife wakes up in the morning, comes crashing on the door. Shmuel, the goat is gone. Our whole livelihood is down the drain. What's going to be over here? So Shmuel looks up from his bed and says, whatever her name was, let's say Rachel. Rachel, don't worry about it. Nothing happened. There's no difference. The difference is only one. Last night the sheep was screaming meh, meh, and now it's saying Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad. Because 20, 30 Hasidim ate it, and they're all in shul davening now. So the goat is saying Hashem Echad. No difference. We elevated the goat. The goat's not doing a mitzvah. But that sounds funny. But if you think about it, that's not funny. That's actually what it's all about. It's about elevating every element. You eat a piece of bread, the bread is not able to do a mitzvah on the shelf in the bakery. or as a grain, stalk of grain in the field, or as a flower, as flour. When you take it and you eat it, and you make a bracha before, and you make a blessing afterwards, and you do it the way you should, and then with that health, with that energy, as you said, you learn Torah, and you come Monday night to a class, you come Sunday to a class, or whenever it is, you do a mitzvah, the bread is now part of that mitzvah. It became part of your flesh, and you are doing a mitzvah, so the bread is doing a mitzvah. You elevated the bread. That's what it's all about. Yeah?
Well, if we take a step back, the pig that we can't eat.
Oh.
How does the pig get elevated?
You're right. So the pig gets elevated through refraining from it. But it doesn't experience the same elevation as that of a kosher animal. You're right. It says that the spark in the pig is stuck in its unholiness and it can't be elevated. When Mashiach comes, it will all be elevated. But somewhat of an elevation it does experience. Why? Because when a Yid wants to eat pork and he decides he's not going to because God doesn't want him, the pig became part of the service of God. You follow?
Pig doesn't know that.
No, the goat doesn't know that it's putting up fill neither. We're talking about the spiritual component of the pig. What are you trying to elevate? There's a godly spark in that pig. That knows it and how. So when it was part of serving God, a Yid wanted to eat it and said, no, I'm not because God doesn't want. By default, that pig was also part of a mitzvah. It was part of the mitzvah by refraining from eating it. Whereas the goat, it's proactive. And by a pig and by the non-kosher food, it's through the other way. But let's not get sidetracked. Let's get back to the signs. So all of Judaism is about making sure, now, when we eat and we engage in the physical world around us, there's a danger. What's the danger? I just painted a pretty picture. Yeah, we're elevating sparks. It's great. We're making, the cow is not going to be a chassid. Right? A Jew. But we know all too well that when we eat, we're not really thinking about sparks and about holiness and about cows becoming humans and so on and elevating the whole world to God. We eat sometimes a good piece of steak because it simply tastes good and it looks good for the stomach is craving that steak because the stomach wants it. So there's a danger in all our relationship with the physical world. What's the danger? On the one hand, we're told to engage the physical world, make money, and eat, and purchase, a house, and purchase a vehicle, a car, and use it all for God, and in that way you elevate everything. But we know ourselves. We know that not always when we go into the car dealership are we looking to elevate something to God. We're looking for a nice car, the latest edition, to have fun on the road. To look good to society. I want the best, I want the nicest, I want this, I want that. So are we elevating the world, or is the world bringing us down? You see, when we do it for God's sake, we elevate the world. That's the ultimate purpose. But what happens if we don't do it for God's sake? We eat that piece of, what?
Filet mignon.
Whatever it is, that kosher meat. If it's not kosher, it's out of the question. But even kosher, you eat that kosher meat, but just to satisfy your palate. Or you buy that house because you just want to live in a comfortable house and to just enjoy the physical pleasure of living in a comfortable house. Or you go on that vacation because you just want to, serve your body's pleasure. That, when you do it that way, not only are you not elevating the physical is bringing you down. It's making you further from God because you're becoming selfish. It's about you. It's not about God. And maybe even to the exclusion of God. And now you have a big problem. So how do you know when your animal is kosher, when you're engaging the physical world with your animal soul, it's a kosher animal, it's a kosher engagement, and when do you know if it's not kosher? The Torah gives you two signs. Listen to this. The two signs are, number one, it has split hooves. What's a split hoof?
A decision, two different ways that you could go.
What? What'd you say?
Two different ways that you could go. The two decisions.
Fear and love.
You're right. It's
Very
interesting
good.
that you say that.
Okay.
That's very true. What does fear and love mean? It's two things. Number one, it means like this. Where's the...
What do you want?
Here, I'll make it with my fingers, okay? This is a split hoof. It has to be split from top to bottom. Number one, this, by the way, is from the Rabbi. He explains it as follows. What is a hoof? A hoof is, you have the leg of the animal, and then on the bottom it has like a something that separates the leg from the earth that it steps on. It's like this, I don't know what you call it, but it's from a different kind of part of the... It separates the leg from the earth, right? He says, number one, you have to have a hoof. A person shouldn't be so attached to the ground. He should have something separating him from groundliness, from earthliness. Famous story of the Rebbe Rashab, fifth Rebbe. He once had a chassid that came to him, and he was telling him, he was a big chassid. He was a mind, he had a great mind, a great heart. He was a devoted chassid to Hashem, he served God. But he went into the business of rubber boots, galoshes. You ever heard of galoshes? Rubber boots. And he was telling the Rebbe about his business, and he was describing it to him, and he was telling him how he buys them, he sells them, the whole thing. So the Rebbe is listening, and at the end he tells him, Rabbi Yid, he says, I've heard of people putting their feet into galoshes, but I never heard of someone putting his head into galoshes. Your whole head is in the galoshes. What the Rebbe was trying to tell him is make business. You need to make a living. That's just part of life. But does your whole head have to be in the earthliness of this? You got to have a hoof. Yes, I'm engaged in the world. I stand on the world. I'm earthbound. But there's something separating me from the earth. I'm not completely one and attached in all my 248 limbs to the earth. There's something separating me. I'm a little bit aloof. I'm a little bit godly too. Yes, I know I have to walk on the ground. That the older I can't float. We have to engage the world. We have to make money. We have to eat. We have to sleep. We have to do all that. But do we have to have our actual bare legs touching the ground? Our whole head has to be in the ground? Or does there remain a space between us and earthliness and the mundane physical world? There has to be something in between.
But
And then 1 second. He goes a step further. He says that not only what happens when you have a separation. Separation can mean as follows. It means like this. You have a Yid that takes the approach and says, my life is in Torah. My life is davening, praying to God. I want nothing to do with this physical world. But you have to eat. And you have to engage. He says, yes, I have to eat. He doesn't think about his food. He wants nothing to do with it. The minimum he eats, the minimum, and he's not, and he wants nothing to do with this world. He makes a hoof between him and the world, between his feet and the world, and the earth. That means his mind is not. He wants nothing to do with this world. He has no choice. He has to eat. He'll eat a minimum. But he's in the synagogue. He's in spiritual things. Don't tell me about the world. I don't want to hear about it. That's not a split hoof, by the way. That's a closed hoof. What's a split hoof? That's not good either. That's like the spies in the desert. They didn't want anything to do with the world. You have to eat. Let it be manna from heaven. They put a complete separation between them and the world. They want nothing to do with it. Hashem wants you to elevate it. He wants you to engage the world. Not for me, that's for someone else. He puts a complete hoof between him and the world. The Rebbe says, no, that's no good. The Torah says that's not a kosher animal. A kosher animal where you're right, there's a separation between you and the hoof, but it's split. What does split mean? Light can shine through. What does light mean? Godly light. It means as follows. When God wants you to engage the world. Yes, He wants you to remain above it to a certain degree, but not so above it we have nothing to do with it. He wants you to go into the world and allow for godly light to shine through your food. Godly light to shine through that hoof. Yes, it should be a hoof. You shouldn't be complete with your head in the galoshes completely. We have no time for anything else. But when you're in the business, let God shine. When you're eating, let God shine. Be concerned with elevating with the world, with making sure that the world is also a partner with God. That the world and God are not two separate things. You see, a lot of spiritualists, in their own mind, the world is separate from God. That's why they want nothing to do with it. So they have a closed hoof. Yes, they're above the world, but they don't realize that the world is also part of God's reality. The world also has a glow of godliness shining through it. And that's the split hoof. What it means is as follows. Don't fool yourself. When you engage in the physical world, you have to make sure that it doesn't pull you down. That you're elevating it up. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of honesty. And no fooling yourself. At the same time, God wants you to be connected to the world. He wants you to walk on the earth and elevate it and engage it. Take this cup, take these keys, take this table, take this building, take this food and make it God. Elevate the whole inanimate vegetation, animalistic, human elements and make it part of Hashem's reality. How are you going to do that? By eating, by sleeping, by engaging. But not with your whole head, heart, and soul into the galoshes. So there's a hoof, but you have to allow for the hoof to be split. God has to be able to shine through that bread, shine through that business. You make money, give it to charity, or give a part of it to charity. Beyond your comfort zone. You have time, study Torah. You have a house. Bring Jews into the house, bring people into the house and make a shir, make the house a place of godliness. Let the house shine with godliness. Let the light through the hoof. You understand what I'm saying? That's a kosher animal. That's at least one sign. What's the second sign? It chews its cud. What is the chewing the cud? No. What is the chewing the cud? Explains as follows. Chewing the cud means we have a Yetzer Hara. And our Yetzer Hara is very, very smart. Very smart.
And patient.
He's patient. He's smart. He knows how to ensnare you. He sees a Yid excited about doing business so he can give tzedakah. He sees a Yid that's going to eat a Shabbos meal and elevate and make it a holy experience. He sees a Yid that's going to do another type of physical mitzvah where the physical body will enjoy. He's not stupid. He knows how to get you. So how do you know at the end of the day that you're really in control of your physical world and the world is not in control of you? You can fool yourself. You can start building castles in the air, saying, "No, I'm elevating the world, and I'm great, and I'm in control." And realize you don't even realize how it's sucking you in, how it's all about you. So the Torah says, if you want to have the kosher animal, you got to chew the cud. What does chewing the cud mean? It swallows the food, and then it brings it back up for another chewing, right? That's what chewing the cud means. It's a double. It brings it back up from the stomach to chew it again, and then it swallows it. It has to do that at least twice. When you're going to eat, and when you're going to engage in the pleasures of life, and you think that you're in control and you're really in there to do it for the sake of heaven and you can elevate it, you can do it all right, bring it up for another examination. Think it over another time. Make sure that this is really you in control of this rather than this being in control of you. It looks like you're in control. You're doing it for God. It's a mitzvah, it's Shabbos, right? You're eating a good meal. And before you know it, you're completely absorbed in your food and you forgot about God and you're just thinking about the tasty chicken soup. And that's all you care about. So before you engage the world, he says, make sure you regurgitate this thing for a moment. Think about it a second time. Bring it up for another examination. Bring it up for another analyzation. Should I really be doing this right now? Am I doing this for my own pleasures, for my own evil inclination, my own urges, or am I doing this because I have to do this and God wants me to do it and I can now have the opportunity to elevate something and make something godly? It's a very fine line, my friends. It's not an easy choice all the time. Sometimes you yourself don't know. So you have to bring it up a second time and maybe even a third time. When you're sure that this is not about you and your cravings, but it's about God and it's about doing the right thing and being a mensch, go ahead and eat it. It's kosher meat. That makes it a kosher. That's kosher meat. That's a kosher animal. Your animal soul could be kosher, but make sure it's kosher. Those are the two signs. It has a hooves. It's not. There's a separation between it and the earthliness of it. You keep your equilibrium, but make sure that you're not completely removed and aloof. You're allowing godliness to shine through. It's split. But you're also right, by the way, that the two...
I like that, the fear and love. Interesting.
I'll share with you. The Rebbe says it in a different place. It says that the split hoof represents a person that serves God with two opposing emotions. Some people serve God in the areas where they're comfortable, that they're naturally inclined to doing. Whether it's in areas of love or fear, you gave those two emotions, I'll use those two emotions. When a person can do both opposite emotions, the right and the left, and they're both equally committed to God. You're committed to God when you're doing something that you love, and you're doing it with the same fire as you're doing something that you're not so excited about. When you have the both right and left leg, meaning the left parts of the hoof, and the right part of the hoof, standing equally on the ground and the split all the way up, that means you're able to serve God from both sides, with both opposing emotions, then you know it's about God, it's not about you. If it was about you, you may do both, but you're going to be more excited about one over the other, because you're going to lean towards your natural instinct. But if you're really doing both equally, with the same excitement, or with the same fire, with the same commitment, that's a sign that you're doing it because God wants you to do it, not because your own natural instinct, innate qualities are pushing you to do it. Because if it was about your own nature, there's no question you would do it one way better than the other way. But if they're both equally standing on the ground, split hooves equally from top to bottom, then it's about that, it's about God. That's a kosher animal. But that's already an added concept. I wasn't going to talk about that so much as I did that your physical engagement has to allow for godly light to shine through everything you're doing. You're making money, God's shining through it. You're giving charity. You're sleeping, God's shining through it. You're sleeping in a proper way. You're eating, God's shining through it. That you're making a blessing before and then a blessing afterwards. And you're eating not just to serve your palate, but because that's what you need to do to be healthy. And so on with everything. You can go on vacation. But make sure, as Nachmanides said, you have to sanctify yourself. The Torah says you have to sanctify yourself with that which is permitted to you. Just because it's permitted doesn't mean you have to do it. When you do it, sanctify. It should be sanctity. A lot of people, they can do everything right, But in the words of Nachmanides, they are scoundrels with the permission of the Torah. You could be a scoundrel, a frumah scoundrel, a religious scoundrel. He has a license from the Code of Jewish Law for everything he wants to do. But you're a rotten person. Sometimes you could be a religious person. Everything, it's all permitted, it's all kosher, but it's rotten to the core. God is not shining through it. So those are the two signs. That's what makes it kosher. It's not just a sign that happens to be that this is, the address. That's what causes it to be kosher. When it has those two signs, then you know it's a kosher Jew, a kosher human being. So think about that. Next time you eat, next time you sleep, next time you buy, next time you shop, next time you spend on yourself, you're busy with yourself, with your physical pleasures, make sure it's a split hoof. You have to be with all your head into the ground. Put a little separation, a hoof. But let God shine through it. At the end of the day, He wants you to walk on the ground. He wants you to be here on earth. But He wants you to have a split hoof where He can shine through. But you never know if you're really on track. So before you run the net, before you do it, bring it up for another tune. Another examination. Do I really need this right now? Or is this just about satisfying my appetites? So this is a very lofty type of serving Hashem. We're talking about levels that are not the average person. But at least to apply it in some way. Maybe not every day, all the time. It's hard. That's already a life of a Beinani. We're not Beinanis. But apply it to certain things. Once in a while you can apply it to yourself. In big things. Make sure that you're not completely absorbed in yourself. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you.